Yeah, it's a little bit awkward that Robin's here. Of course, we're not on the best of terms.
My desire and intention has always been to have a good relationship with Christine. That's what I'm putting forward.
Because these relationships do need to get mended.
We've had such a struggle with this. I'd almost rather just take some time to get in a better place with you and me.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're diving into Christine Brown Woolley's book. I've spent the last couple of days reading it, actually rereading most of it, because I really wanted to sit with my thoughts. We've already talked through some of the big takeaways, highlighted moments, and overall impressions in earlier videos, but now I want to give a more critical perspective. This isn't about piling on Christine, but there are definitely aspects of this book that I think might frustrate or upset some readers. For one, the book really exposes just how much deception went on with the show. You come away realizing that, for years, the family wasn't being fully honest with viewers. Christine also talks about her involvement in MLMs, which feels at odds with what she writes about in the book. She sells natural supplements, yet she admits to relying on certain medications instead, which doesn't line up with her public persona. The biggest point, though, is about polygamy itself. If you care about the impact polygamy has on women and children, or if you once believed this family was trying to present a healthier version of it, the book is tough to read. Christine admits that the Apostolic United Brethren, the church they belonged to, was no better than the FLDS. For years, they insisted it was different, but the truth is that it wasn't, and still isn't. Christine's reflections swing back and forth. Sometimes she has fond memories of her childhood, other times she acknowledges she was raised in a cult, that she raised her own kids in the same environment, and yet she struggles to fully examine her own role in that. She also talks about how this culture encourages narcissism. At one point, she even acknowledges her own narcissistic tendencies. There's no question she endured a lot of trauma with Cody, but she also admits to lying frequently on the show. From what I gather, she felt she had no choice, because telling the truth would mean Cody pulling away, withholding affection, ignoring her children, or abandoning her completely. That kind of fear explains the cognitive dissonance she lived in, staying stuck in denial just to survive. And honestly, I think there's still some denial even now. Christine admits in the book that the show hurt her family, that none of her kids want to participate anymore, and that even truly doesn't want to be filmed. In the epilogue, she even says she's ready to be done with the show, questioning why they're still filming at all. She truly believed that leaving Cody would mean leaving the show, but the contract pulled her back in. Throughout the book, she describes Cody as controlling, and then at other times, not controlling, which makes things feel contradictory. But by the end, it's clear she sees herself stepping away. For example, she writes, "Ultimately, I think the show helped our family. We all developed voices and learned to speak out. We learned to look back and think about all of it rather than simply struggling through the day-to-day with no context. Sometimes I watch something now and think, wow, that was crazy, and that helps me process. I think Sister Wives has been a realistic representation of us." That statement comes right after she admits she lied on camera a lot. So it leaves you wondering, was the show really a realistic portrayal if so much of what we saw wasn't the truth? Or, is deception itself just part of what made the show real for this family? Either way, it's complicated. Christine insists that Sister Wives showed her both at her best and at her worst, and maybe that's the most honest thing she says. We've seen Christine on the show at her lowest points, jealous, insecure, and sad, but also at her happiest and most motivated, even stepping in as a mediator. She credits a lot of that experience to the crew, who she says were always supportive. In fact, when she and Cody left the hospital with Truly after she was born, one of the crew members actually rode home with them. Christine says they see themselves as Truly's uncles, because they've been part of her entire childhood. And it's not just one-sided. Christine has also watched the crew grow up, get married, and have kids of their own. She describes them as always doing their best to make filming positive, even on really hard days. But despite that, her kids are ready to be done. Christine recalls Aspen once telling her, "You know what? I think I've lived your life long enough. I want to live my own now." Truly doesn't want to film anymore either. Christine explains that after she left Cody, Truly was on set once and she thought, "We're not doing this." Since then, Truly has been in the background at family events but hasn't appeared on set. Christine doesn't want her daughter to grow up immersed in the show or exposed to all of their family drama. In fact, she's never let Truly watch Sister Wives, especially the more recent seasons. And it's not just Truly, the majority of her kids don't watch anymore either. Christine admits she was shocked when the network announced another season. She couldn't imagine what was left to film. For her, the ideal would have been to simply live life with David, away from cameras. But instead, she found herself still working with producers to develop storylines. She suggests maybe the fresh start in her new life is the story now, the hopeful part. These days, her world revolves around things like planning for retirement, running her vacation rental, and looking for another one, and spending time with her grandkids. She and Janelle still do things together, and sometimes film those projects. Janelle's flower farm is thriving, which Christine calls a dream come true. And while she says she genuinely loved doing the show and the opportunities it brought, what she values most is the personal growth that came from it all. She says she loves who she is today, the woman shaped by living polygamy, leaving it, and meeting countless people through this journey. The book actually begins around the filming of season 19, and now season 20 is coming. But Christine makes it sound like, for her, that's the end. She makes it clear she doesn't want to talk about Cody anymore. She's done revisiting the past. Reliving those memories has been incredibly painful, and she describes writing the book as a way to close the chapter for good. It feels like her exclamation point, her way of tying it all together. Honestly, if the show continues beyond season 20, I'd be shocked to see her stick around. Why would she keep filming alongside an ex-husband she has no desire to be around? One small section of the book that could easily be overlooked, but is actually really important, is when Christine writes about telling the producers she was leaving Cody. She explains that the producer, Tim Gibbons, originally approached the family in 2008 or 2009 because he believed polygamists were being denied civil rights. He framed it as a civil rights issue, comparing it to movements about race, gender, ethnicity, or sexuality. But Christine points out what many legal experts already know: polygamy is not a civil right. You can practice your religion, but you can't break the law under the banner of religion. Freedom of religion doesn't extend to human trafficking, labor trafficking, or coercive polygamous marriages. Even Christine admits that the civil rights argument didn't hold up with Utah legislators. Instead, the only successful legal push they had was when they shifted focus to abuse, emphasizing the harm caused by polygamy. She reminds readers that polygamy is still a felony in Utah under certain conditions. Having multiple wives isn't automatically prosecuted, but if abuse or coercion is involved, it can be. And Christine makes it clear she believes Cody coerced her into marriage. He wasn't physically attracted to her, he didn't want to marry her, but he went through with it anyway, because she was considered polygamy royalty, and marrying her gave him status in the church. She says he misled her, made her believe he truly wanted her, and then kept her tied to him for over 20 years without ever really wanting her as a partner. Worse, he prevented her from finding someone else who could have loved her. That's coercion by definition, entering a marriage under false pretenses and keeping someone trapped for your own benefit. By Christine's account, Cody could technically be charged under Utah's laws for that. And that leads into one of the book's most powerful points: polygamy as Christine experienced it doesn't exist without systemic abuse, control, and the subjugation of women. She sees that reality now, but she's still in the early stages of processing just how harmful it was. Personally, I told my husband the other night that I think this book is about 10 years too early. Christine needed to write it now to close her chapter with Sister Wives, but I believe if she wrote the same book a decade from now, it would look very different. Why? Because time and distance matter. Survivors of cults or abusive systems often take years before they fully recognize what they endured. Christine is still emerging from the fog of Cody's gaslighting, the production's manipulation, and the narcissistic abuse that was part of her life for decades. And while I'm not a psychologist, I've interviewed and researched enough survivors to know that it takes years, sometimes decades, for them to fully process their trauma without guilt or shame. Christine's story is powerful now, but I think the clearest version of it is still ahead of her. Right now, Christine admits she feels a deep sense of shame, and that part is heartbreaking. She says she's embarrassed that she lived this way for so long. She's embarrassed she raised her kids in this lifestyle. She's embarrassed that she allowed Cody to treat her the way he did. And while that's where she's at today, I think if she wrote this book years from now, her perspective would shift. Shame carries the idea that she did something wrong, that somehow it was her fault. With more distance, I believe that shame would turn into clarity. Oh my God, I was being abused. Christine gets close to saying that in the book but stops short of labeling it outright. Everyone comes to that realization at their own pace. Now, getting back to the producers, because they had a specific vision for the show, Christine describes what it was like telling them her marriage was ending. She says, "I knew many of them were cheering for me, and that brought me comfort. I've always felt a little odd being a character on TV, but this time it was so personal. I needed to be authentic, maybe more than I'd ever been, because I knew I would serve as an example for so many." And honestly, I think she was right. She really did set an example by showing her strength. Christine explains that she and Cody needed to tell their producer, Tim Gibbons, what was happening, not just for the storyline that season but because it was going to be obvious. She was packing up her house, and Cody wasn't showing up anymore. She told Cody he needed to be part of that conversation. His response? "Why do I need to be there? You're the one leaving." To which Christine basically thought, "Exactly, but you're also the reason I'm leaving." So, they met with Tim over Zoom. And when they told him, he cried. "I was afraid it was this," he admitted. By that point, the family and the crew had spent so many years together that it was clear Tim genuinely cared about them. But this was not the show Christine had wanted to film. She reflects back on when the show began. The network warned them that every reality TV family eventually breaks up. But the Browns had brushed it off. "No, that won't happen to us," they said. During the COVID years, they even filmed much of the divorce process themselves on their phones, and Tim worked with them to figure out how to cover it. He stayed on with the show for another 2 years after that, but eventually, in 2024, he left. Christine says she misses working with him and believes it was simply too hard for him to keep documenting a family that was falling apart. She also notes that it's been rough on the crew in general. This wasn't the story she wanted told. And in the end, even Tim admitted his original vision wasn't really about polygamy, it was about something bigger. From the beginning, the family painted a picture that there was no abuse, no neglect, no inequity. They wanted viewers to believe these families were loving, that the husbands weren't patriarchal, and that women weren't demeaned or mistreated. But when Christine finally left Cody, he became everything they had claimed not to be. He grew more controlling, more abusive in his behavior, openly demanding loyalty, declaring himself the patriarch, laying down rules, and treating the wives as second-class citizens. It was the exact opposite of what they had promised producers back in 2009 when they pitched the show as a healthier version of polygamy. And I don't think this was just about Christine no longer wanting to film. I honestly think their producer, Tim, felt deceived. He believed in a story that turned out not to be true. Maybe it was too much for him intellectually, maybe too much emotionally. But either way, being tied to the collapse of this experiment would have been a bad look. Because in the end, Tim's experiment was meant to show the world that polygamy wasn't what people thought it was. And guess what? It turned out to be exactly what we all expected. Sure, the Browns didn't wear prairie dresses, but we still saw the same patterns play out, publicly, in front of the cameras. There were inequitable divisions of assets, wives with no legal rights to property, no insurance for the children, and no financial security. This was a family living in massive 4,500 square foot homes, yet they didn't even have health coverage for their kids. That's not just ironic, it's a rampant issue inside polygamy. We also saw kids raising kids, parents stretched too thin, and not nearly enough time, attention, or love to go around. All the problems that exist in polygamy were right there on display. So when Christine walked away, Cody had to know the spotlight would finally shine on all of that. And instead of facing it, Tim walked away too. He felt deceived, but at the same time, he helped create the problem by allowing the family's narrative to mislead all of us for so many years. That raises a huge question. If the producer himself has stepped away, can viewers really buy into another season of this show? Especially when Christine spends nearly 300 pages admitting over and over again that she didn't believe half of what she was saying on camera. She even reveals that she wanted to leave Cody as far back as season 1. She says she knew it deep down from the very beginning, and by season 6 it was basically cemented. That means, the entire time the show was filming, she already had one foot out the door. Take her example from the commitment ceremony. On camera, the whole family presented this beautiful ritual of unity. Cody spoke about abundance and affection. Janelle talked about responsibility. Robin cried about their eternal bond. Everyone signed a covenant, surrounded by family and cameras. The wives poured colored sand into one container to symbolize togetherness. The kids spoke, gave roses, and they planted a family tree. Cody even lit sparklers over the cul-de-sac. But here's what Christine was really thinking: this is ridiculous. I'm not even going to be staying. She literally set her container down and thought to herself that it was meaningless, because she already knew she was preparing to leave. And just 2 weeks later, that very container tipped over and broke, a metaphor if there ever was one. That's just one example of how Christine admits she was essentially playing a role for the cameras. She wasn't being authentic because she couldn't be. She says she didn't truly find her voice until she decided to leave Cody, and only then did she stop playing the game. In a way, the book shows Christine rebelling, rejecting the faith, rejecting Cody's authority, and finally speaking out. Cody didn't like that. It pushed her further away while he clung to the wives who would still lie for him. So here we are, the producer doesn't want the show to continue, Christine herself admits she doesn't want to film anymore, and fans are left wondering, why keep watching? Are viewers really going to tune into season 20 knowing that Cody's entire storyline will just be damage control and an attempt at redemption? That's the big question I want to leave with you. What do you think? Let me know down in the comments. And as always, make sure to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and click that notification bell so you never miss an update. Thanks for hanging out with me today. Bye guys.